Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Blind Ambition with Jack Kelly. It's your friend Rick here from Blind, and I have the pleasure of introducing the CEO and co-founder of Phenom. Phenom is a global HR technology company with a mission to help 8 billion with a B people find the right job. So it's a software as a service platform. It basically connects companies with people that are, at the candidate stage and hopefully converts them into thriving employees and actual enthusiastic brand advocates for the companies and industries that they work in, which is a very admirable goal. So thanks for coming on the show, Mahe.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Jack.
So Mahe, this is so a billion. Your goal is to help 1 billion people through AI, and AI now is what everybody's talking about. It looks like the future, but you're like the OG of AI, right? Because you've been working in this space for a long time. So maybe you could tell me from your company, and which is really interesting, by the way, Ambler, Pennsylvania, not Silicon Valley, not San Francisco, the suburbs of Philly, which is, a little different and unique. So maybe you could kind of say, hey, how did you get involved with AI, and what does your company do to make it better for people to find jobs and advance within their careers?
That's an interesting question. So what happened is I all my life, all I went for school is for computer science. So it's basically what I grew up with, computer science. So then what happened is in Philly, a lot of people don't know, Philly is the headquarters for healthcare data for the last 30 years.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know that.
Like a lot of people have no awareness about it. My last business is about like healthcare data analytics, which is primarily about how do you find patients for a clinical trial, which is nothing but patient recruiting. That was my previous business, which is a complete failure, but a great idea. Okay, so
Got to meet you, Jack. You know what? One of the things, Rick, we've seen on the podcast, I love the fact that people are open and honest when they fail. Like tech, to me, is one of the few areas that people could say, "Oh yeah, I failed," and just casual, and then you go on like it's nothing, and it's acceptable, right? Other areas, if you're on Wall Street and you fail, you're toast, you're done, you're away with. So I don't mean to interrupt, but I love that your honesty and transparency. So it didn't really work out, and then what you're trying to do, like take two, right? The next step.
Yeah. So what happened is, what was the healthcare data really about, especially in North America, is all about you buy data from pharmacies, you buy data from insurance companies, you buy data from hospitals, and you buy data from doctor offices. You basically merge the data and really understand who the patients are, what their diseases are, which particular demographics they live in, but you don't know who those people are because they're all de-identified data sets. But you understand where the people really sit, how they're really thinking, how many cohorts are really standing in each particular county or whatever it is. And based on that, like pharmaceutical companies target people to really recruit them. So we used to really give this analysis of all this data and really give a perspective about where to recruit patients from. Now, what happened in that particular thing is, to understand the patient, you need 4 different data sets from 4 different viewpoints: a doctor, an insurance company, a pharmacy, and a hospital. And when you really take that data and look from multiple perspectives, you can understand the person in a much more effective format. So what we thought is, why can't we apply to true recruiting? What are the 4 unique characteristics or characters who play in recruiting and retention? It's the candidate who's looking for a job, the employee who's working in the company, the manager who's going to really put a team together, and the HR, which is making the whole equation organized. If we understand each particular perspective, you can understand talent in a very authentic format. And that was the thesis what we built. But the thesis is built on the failure of the last company, but the thesis by itself is right. So what we really thought is, why can't we really build that kind of an infrastructure in recruiting and retention? So both for talent acquisition and the talent management. So that's where the company started. But if you really take so much data from multiple perspectives. The only way you can do it is through AI. There is no other method. So we didn't really use
Mahe,
AI.
can I ask you, can I ask you a stupid question?
Yeah.
How do you get like that, all that data? Like where, let's say now, not the pharmacy, but let's say when it comes to the SaaS product that you have that you offer to companies. I mean, again, dude, this is a naive question on my part. So how do you accumulate it all?
So what we did is in HR, people don't really collect the data like healthcare infrastructure do. Because in healthcare, everybody is paid based on the data you collected, because the patient cannot pay, the insurance companies pays, like everybody's collecting. So the data sets are really rich because of the payment mechanism. In HR, that data is not as relevant as the healthcare system is. So what we did is we created 4 different experiences to collect the data on the existing data infrastructure. We call that candidate experience to collect how a candidate experience and what data we can collect about them, employee experience, HR experience, and the manager experience. When we give them an experience which is relevant, which is highly personalized, which can work on any device or any channel, you can understand them better. Once you understand them, now you take the data and you really hyper-personalize and automate the overall workflow of recruiting and retention wherever you don't need to create this mundane task everybody hates. That was the business what we really run.
So by using large amounts of data and artificial intelligence, you could kind of predict what type of candidate would be good for a job, what type of internal worker may be good for a role within the organization. And instead of having hours and hours of person hours trying to find it out, the AI could kind of synthesize all that so you can make decisions better to help people. Is that sort of kind of what it is?
So if it is a frontline job, which is not like a permanent job, like working in a particular restaurant, people don't think like they have to work there for 7 years, right? Or even 2 years. They really change so fast. The average like retail worker or a restaurant worker is less than 6 months. If that is the case, what does the type of consideration you think about a talent fit and how do you attract them is different from if you're hiring somebody for a knowledge worker. Let's say you are hiring for a nurse or you're hiring a software developer. The way you really recruit is entirely different. So now, what does the algorithm or what kind of AI you have to deploy in each particular infrastructure and what models you have to deploy changes very, very differently. And that's what makes the whole experience very relevant for the candidate, to the employee and the HR. And that's what we really deliver day in and day out.
Now, Rick, that's probably a good help for the blind, platform or any platform, right? To be able to find people quickly and find the best people, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that there's kind of a common frustration among candidates, especially when you get a bit more experience with the application process, right? Oftentimes you have to go on all of these different career pages or different message boards. And what ends up happening is sometimes you have to deal with an application where you're filling out things that are already on your resume, right? And you have to do this multiple times. And so I have to ask, why or how has the candidate experience gotten so poor? Like, what is the reason for that? Is it some like compliance? Is it just this has always been the way we've done things? Why might that be the case?
So the apply flow is actually complicated. One is for compliance reasons. The second reason is I want to qualify the person, and I have so many people are applying for jobs. So I want to ask as many questions as possible so that if you answer all the questions, for my life is easier to hire you. And that was the notion before COVID, because there are so many people applying. Like on average, each job in a frontline use case used to have 100 applicants. Right now, they dropped by almost like 5x. So 1/5 of the people are only applying compared to what they used to get applications. Now, because of that, like what happens is the apply processes has to be simplified. And that is the first action what they really took. But there is also another notion. The overall recruiting experience really bothers the candidate because there is no search like e-commerce. There is no personalization like e-commerce. There is nothing like, if I see this, what is the other thing I can see? Like that doesn't exist. What we created as a company is all those search experiences and personalization experiences are default whoever uses our product. We created this e-commerce infrastructure so that people can use it very, very easily. Now, think about this. In a knowledge worker use case, skills, relevancy of a particular job, what project I'm working is very, very critical. And based on your resume, we created an AI parsing engine so that we can really parse and understand what your resume says and show you quickly what are the best jobs you fit for. That simplifies the overall process. The minute you give that, we automatically can fill the form what is already established, and you only fill what is not there. So that simplifies the candidate experience. But now here is the point. This is for the talent attraction. But if it is an employee also wants to grow in a company. They won't apply for a newer jobs, or they hate their boss, or they don't like the job they're really working, whatever is going on, right? They also want to really look for a newer job within the company. They start within the company. But the problem is most of the companies don't have the right infrastructure until Phenom really coming into existence to really make this process very seamless. So what we did is we created this very unique experiences for each employee. So the employee who joins in the first 6 months have a different viewpoint about the company than a person who is there for 18 months, than a person who is there for 3.5 years. And their aspirations are different. How they grew within the company are different. Which particular area or zone they are working are different. Are there only a 4 years experience or a 15 years experience do make a difference. So based on that, in a candidate side, you don't have all this set up. But in an employee side, you do know who the employees are. Now, from that perspective, how do you personalize for them? Where to grow, where to think about a new job, or what are the skills you should acquire? These are the things what we do using AI on both talent acquisition and the talent management.
That's so interesting. So let's say, it sounds like the more data you can get from a person, the more accurate it would be. So let's say, Rick Chen, and I'll say this just from an uneducated perspective from the outside, is that, okay, he's a PR person, a communications, director, he's a sports writer, and then fill in all the other things, where he's worked in the past and what he's done in the different jobs. So then you have this, visualization of what skills, attributes, knowledge, experience he has. So then if, let's say, within his organization, something opens up, they may say, okay, it's not a PR job, it's not a communication job, but we think his background would fit for, I'll make this up, marketing, for a marketing executive. And so instead of going out and recruiting and spending money for someone outside the firm, they could say, hey, we're just going to promote Rick because he has, all those data points that reflect he would be perfect for the director of marketing role. Is that kind of sort of how it works?
Exactly. So there are a couple of points. One is skills, which is what you're pointing out, Jack. The second one is the competencies. And the third component is behaviors. So to really grow in a job, just don't acquiring skills is not the only thing. It's also about the competencies and the behaviors. What happens in competencies are people are not incompetent. There are
Well, I
people,
don't know.
but like, let me give you what my point is.
You were
here.
on the phone with me before when I was speaking to Merrill Lynch and trying to figure stuff out. Yeah, if you very incompetent.
People are uninterested. That's what build incompetency. So you are interested on something else. You won't build competency on the area where it makes sense because your interest is where your competency is actually built. That's human evolution is constantly about like my interest towards my competency is actually really linked. And what happens is if they're not really building the competencies, just having a desire don't take you anywhere. Everybody has a desire to become something else. But are you building your competencies? Are you building your skills? Are you building your behaviors to make sure you really go there? That's where the whole equation is. Now, how do you help them based on what their desires and what their aspirations are? And what kind of things they can really learn, who can be a mentor, what the gigs they should do. Those are all things what we really give within the product infrastructure, what we have. And we help like over 6 million employees across the globe to really grow in their career paths.
Wait, 6 million employers, did you say?
Employees.
Employees. And how can somebody like, let's say Rick or myself, if you want to advance within the organization or want to be recruited by another organization, is there a way that workers, employees should kind of do certain things so that like a company like yours who have those SaaS systems, you could stand out? Is there anything that they could do to make them more noticeable?
Yeah, it depends on the type of the job, right? If it is a knowledge worker, the most important thing is what is your agility in learning? That is what everybody is really looking for, because your skills, like shelf life is less than 2.5 years. So the only person, a knowledge worker who can thrive is how fast you can learn. And now you also have something called as frontline workers. Here, the use cases are a bit different. It's always about the behaviors and the learning agility. So what is happening here is, if you really look at almost every job right now, have two things really going on because of AI. In the frontline use case, you have a cobot, which means like an automated bot, which will do some of your job. And if you really go to a knowledge worker, it's a co-pilot. Something which will do, like if you're a writer right now, ChatGPT is an example, it can write some of the stuff, but it cannot write the newer thoughts. You have to come up with the thoughts, but it can really refine your writing. So, but whereas in a cobot infrastructure, if you take Amazon Fulfillment Center, the rate at which you can really pack the boxes can be much more faster because of the AI infrastructure of a bot, what you have next to you, because it can really help you on the different attributes. So the point here is, based on the type of the job, the dimensions of how people have to learn, what competencies have to build, are completely switching. I'll give you an example. Quite recently, I was actually talking to one of the panel of people who, some of them are in Army, and they were saying the future of Army is actually going to be the strong heroes who really knows how to use data. It's not about just, like, you cannot really go into Army just because you are fit anymore, because the data sets are completely changed. And the way you have to really determine what is right, what is wrong has really shifted. So every job family is completely switching because of AI in a very, very unique format.
That's pretty mind-blowing. It's interesting because we've had a number of folks who worked, who are from Israel, right? Who they have a very robust tech scene there. And they would go into the Army, exactly what you're saying. They're not necessarily fighting, but they're developing all the weaponry, they're developing all the technology, they're developing all the other stuff. So yeah, like as you're saying, you're not actually doing that fighting, but you're using artificial intelligence and all sorts of other things to make really advanced technology.
Exactly. So, but like now what happens is in recruiting and retention, there is a cycle of the employee, the manager, and also what you call as your HR. They have to be in sync of understanding where is the market conditions, where is the current sentiment of talent, and what is our strategy to execute. For that, the tooling what you need today are three things. You need experiences which can really make everybody feel like they're relevant. The second thing is you also have a lot of automation really built in. And the third thing is you should have intelligence to make decisions. Without those three attributes, recruiting and retention is not easy anymore. It is all about what is the experience you deliver, what's the automation you will make, and what's the intelligence you have so that your decision making and really moving people will be much more effective. And companies are struggling because those three things are not part of most of the products in the market today.
Well, let me give you a real life example.
Yeah.
I see this in my own work because I've been running a executive search firm for 25 years. And Rick, on his platform, they have millions of people who are now looking for a lot of jobs, given what's going on in the tech sector. Let's say as a recruiter, give you some real life insights. One of the frustrating things is it's still kind of old fashioned. We're just trying to find the right person, getting in touch with them, calling them up, sending emails. People who are reaching out who aren't the right people, then it's awkward because you don't want to say, hey, you're not good for it, because then they feel bad and they get angry. So let's say on the recruiting side, where either somebody's trying to hire someone or someone wants to be hired, how does that all work together? What can people do to make it more successful on both sides?
So the most important thing is, the first thing is, how do you really put your profile together, right? Like that is the fundamental, most important aspect everybody has to think through. So what does that means is, one sec. So the most important thread, what I really felt was, how do you think your put your resume together so that it's not just you're really doing the resume from the angle of what I know, to you have to start thinking about what these algorithms are really looking for. So there is something called as a 6-second view a recruiter has towards a resume. If you look at like what is a 6-second view, you're looking at what's your name, where the location is. You're really looking at what's the experience you have, what's the education you have. All you need is 6 seconds to say like, hey, somebody's qualified or not. That is what a human can do in a very, very fast way. You're not right, wrong is indifferent, but you can have really a context of how do you really look at a particular candidate. Now, how do you make that 6-second view really relevant for yourself so that the other person who is looking at it can really sense like, hey, this is something what I want to really take and talk to. That 6-second view is the most important thread, what everybody has to think. And like, how do you really articulate it in that 6 seconds is one thing. But now what is happening is with the AI, the machines are really looking for that 6 seconds view too. What are they really looking at? Where are you located? What your experience is, what your education is, and what skills you have. That's what an algorithm is picking up. So make sure you are clearly articulating what you have. That's the first and the foremost important infrastructure people have to think about.
I'm curious, there are always these kind of TikTok videos or life hacks or all of these tricks online of how to apply for a job or how to write a resume. And one of the most common that I've seen is actually typing in your role, looking for job openings for your current existing role, and comparing that to kind of the roles that you want out there, and basically mashing the two job descriptions all of the responsibilities or the requirements, picking and choosing which apply to your experience, and updating your resume that way, using the exact language, so-called, from all of these job postings. Is that a good strategy? Is that one way to show the algorithms that you're qualified?
Yeah, so even humans, you can do it, or an algorithm, you can do it, like writing to the job description exactly I have. But the problem is, if you really do it just to really make sure it passes the 6-second view, you basically will get disqualified in the interview. Because the interview is about really saying what you wrote is actually matching to what you said. Right? Like, and those things is why interviews do exist, whether it's virtual or real time, whatever it is. Why do they exist? Because it's not what you wrote, is what you really are. So when you're really writing matching word by word, the algorithm will really say like, hey, you really matched. But if you really put like such a high expectations and really go there, and if you don't have none of those and you really wrote everything because of the languages actually matching, then it'll actually backfire. So it's appropriate to write what is common, because in today's systems, most are semantic infrastructures. So even if you write in your own format, it can match against what you're really saying. So and because of that, like, matching is not a big deal. It's about, can you defend what you really wrote?
Wow, surprise.
This is going to sound a little trippy, but what do you guys think about this? Moving forward, is there a possibility, Mahe, that one day, instead of having interview after interview, because right now, let's say in my world, someone's going to go through 3-6 interviews over 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and it's just terrible. It just exhausts people. Do you think eventually, if AI gets good enough, let's say with your company, gets it to the point where you don't even have to, maybe you have just one little interview, meaning that they can know everything about you from all the data points better than what you could describe for yourself, where they can tell you, you can learn, hey, this is everything about Rick, and through the artificial intelligence and data exactly who he is. So then when it comes to interview, maybe it's a 15-minute interview to make sure he's not a psycho killer, but everything else is good. Do you think eventually it could go to that direction where it could be so good and so on point and so targeted that you could just right away, okay, this person's good for the job?
So this is happening today.
Yeah.
For all frontline job use cases. The companies who use our product, they automate 90% of the interview flow. How do they really do it? You can do assessments on a bot. So you can, on an SMS, you can ask questions about like, hey, do you have experience? Do you have license, or whatever it is? And then really get those answers. Then we also have something called as video automation, interview automation. So what it does is, it's a video assessment. You ask a question through a video, and there is no human on the other side. The candidate really answers what they really feel for those questions. And based on that, we don't really analyze human expressions or anything. We take the text and really convert into like which particular thing has actually matched to the question, and really show to the manager. Whoever they think are qualified can really come for an in-person interview. Or really go through another assessment, which can really ask them, hey, can you really do a psychometric assessment to really find out what you're really saying? So in a frontline use case, you can really do today and apply to an offer letter in 45 minutes. And let me repeat this, apply to an offer letter in 45 minutes. So that is not complicated, but that is for the jobs which are frontline use cases, working in a restaurant, working in a hospitality, in a hotel, all those kinds of things, or logistics centers, or working for Uber, or whatever it is. Now what happens is, after you qualify, somebody send an offer letter, you have to do a background check. That's when the whole equation again has to start. Now, that won't applicable for like a knowledge worker use case. If you are hiring for a nurse, you can still automate, but only you can automate 20, 30%. Now what happens is, the most important trick here is you have to really interview the person. In that particular segment, we actually really created something called as interview intelligence. What it does is, it actually helps the person who is interviewing from the company's side, what are the questions they should ask? Because if there are 5 people who are interviewing, if all the people are asking the same question, what good is it for the candidate experience? So each one has a particular dimension. One is actually looking at technical analysis. The other one is really looking at skills. The other one is looking at the culture fit. The other one is really looking at compensation. The other one is looking at the team fit. What are you really looking at, and what questions you should ask based on the other questions, and what is a summary? And how do you coach each interviewer in an effective format so that you can get the right answers from the candidate so that you can assess better? That infrastructure doesn't exist before. That is something what we really built to make the whole experience really relevant, especially for a knowledge worker use case. It is also used in a frontline worker use case, but what is happening is, how do you deploy techniques? How do you deploy intelligence versus automation differs by what type of job you're really doing and what type of interview you're really doing. And now, see, if you really look at interview management today, it's one of the black holes. Nobody knows how an interview actually happens. Whatever the requirements you write on a job description, that is not the only reason why you are recruited. Your personality, your fit against the team, what is you're good at, what the team is actually weak at. Nobody writes that on a job description. But when the interviewer is interviewing, they all are analyzing all those components of what is a right fit for that team. And that is not translated into any digital format today. But because of the video infrastructure today, you can really bring that into a perspective and coach people to make sure you can eliminate bias, but actually think about the best fit in a very authentic format. That is a newer media, which right now popped up all of a sudden in the last couple of, like last 3 years, every interview, almost like 90% of the interviews are virtual. Because of that, you have a newer data set, which can empower human beings to really understand how to interview, but also like how not to.
Do you take data points from video interviews?
Yes. So the way we really take is not about what are the facial expressions, what the answer is. You ask a question from a text, from text perspective, we take the text and what the answer really came out, which answer the person resonated the best. The interviewer resonated the best, which answer is right fit against the concept. Then you can really circle it to the whole team, saying like how this answer is. So do we have to really move forward or not? So in your decision making, it actually helps which particular constructs you want to really go deep, in which particular constructs you don't need to. So the next interviewer can really make a very, very unique judgment call on what to do. So here is the point. All the AI of today's infrastructure is just amplifying intelligence. It cannot amplify judgment, because still judgment is in the hands of mostly humans for a very, very long time. Because the way we really call the judgment of who is a fit is not just based on skills. It's based on competencies and behaviors of the past experiences of the group. And that's where like recruiting is not just a straight shooter, just matching skills. It's more than that.
Would this play out? So let's take a software engineer.
Yeah.
Would a software engineer, and as I understand it, Rick knows this better than I do, but and so you correct me if I'm wrong, Rick, but with software engineers, it's a lot of it is, hey, write this code, let's see how good you are with the code. Is that better or worse than taking all the AI data points of everything you've talked about? Which would they be the same? Would what the person taking that coding test be more relevant? Or can you make a better decision because you know so much about that software engineer that you don't need to watch this person tell him or her to write a code.
Yeah. So software engineer fit based on a skill assessment is a very simpler problem to solve.
Mhm.
So if somebody interviews and asks questions about whether you know Java, Python, or data science or JavaScript, based on like where you wrote the code and what you wrote, and I can really give a couple of assessments and ask you how you did it and all that stuff. The bigger problem is, will you fit for the team and will you fit the culture? And are you going to like be retained in the company because you like the team you're working with and the problem you're working with, and also the team likes you? That is where the combination actually has to really happen. With that, what happens is people really feel they're connected, they found the right job. Right now, what's happening is whoever is giving the better salary or whatever it is, people are really picking up. And at the end, like people feel like this is not the job what I really signed up for. That disconnect is what has to be eliminated. In the software engineering today, like type of the job do matters. Like if it is a data science, you don't have a lot of experience data science, like 10, 15 years experience data scientists don't exist. Like they're not like humongous in number, they're far and few. But if you ask for a Java developers for 15 years, you do have. But after 15 years, do a Java developer still want to be a Java developer?
Probably not.
Probably not. So now, what are the aspirations you're really looking for? Are you a fit for this job and what you're really looking at? And is the company offers those real equations? And that's where fitness is a problem. The fitness is not just based on skills. Skills is a basic problem, but it's a fit of the culture of the company and the culture of the team is where the complexity right now is actually heavily amplified. Right now, there is the Silicon Valley tech scene has changed a bit because of the last couple of like quarters, whatever is going on, but that's not permanent, right? We only have 29 million developers for a 7 billion population.
Mm.
It's still far few than what we need. So the market conditions has a very limited impact compared to what the needs of the developer ecosystem. And on top of it, there is also another thing going on. Right now, for every programming, you have co-pilots, which is nothing but like GitHub has a co-pilot, which is a Microsoft co-pilot. There are a bunch of companies who created these co-pilots. You can ask for code. Part of the code is actually generated based on what you really ask. And then you really look at it and then really merge it to where you really need it, in what context. So the job of a developer is constantly changing because of the frameworks, because of the tool infrastructure, because of the co-pilots. So how much you know about the problem we are solving on top of your technical skills.
Speaking of coding, I'm reading about where you could use like ChatGPT to actually help code.
Yep.
So is that going to be so will artificial intelligence even impact software engineers then down the road? Do you actually need the human beings, or the AI could help do it and then the human will help like enhance it?
So there's one thing, we humans are experts of one thing, that is whatever is abundant, we hate it.
Whatever is abundant, we hate it.
Yep. So
Why
that's
is
why,
that?
because we don't like what is free.
You just take it for granted, you mean?
We don't value it.
Yeah.
We just don't have any value for it. So what is the point from that is, if it is so simple, then there is no value for it. So if the coding, the machine is generating the code, but still you have to determine, is this the code you want to really write in this particular use case? Because there are so many tools which can really produce like the code, what is relevant, but which one you will really write in which particular context, you still have to determine. So what happens is all the AI infrastructure, including ChatGPT or co-pilots or whatever it is, they will really simplify and bring productivity for a human being or a developer. But if it becomes so simple and so cheap, we'll ask for more. So, and that is an ever required instinct of a human being. So I'm not really worried about that simplification. So like if you really look at like farming today is so easy, and we have so much food everywhere. Go to any grocery store, like the food is amplified. Nobody is really dying like, I don't really get this food. You can get any food from anywhere in the world. But the point is, now we need organic food, right? And why is it? Because what is abundant is not what is really valued. Like, so constantly that upgrade will really come. The context of how to write the code, the context of how to make the data science work, that is not simplifying. It's getting complicated and complicated and complicated. So now let me give you an example. If we take generative AI as an example, there are foundational models. You need specialized models and you need contextual models. The foundation models are actually available to make the general knowledge available. Hey, the general code, whatever you can really write, or hey, like what a particular plant is doing, or write a particular sentence in a different format. Like those things you can really get. But within a context of, let's say in our business, in HR, what is a recruiter supposed to send an email for this particular candidate who applied for this job, who might not join our company? The chances are less than 40%. ChatGPT can't write anything. The reason is because the context is convoluted and it's complex. For that context, how do you really pick from ChatGPT? And then really think about what specialized model you have to build on top of it. What is a contextual model you have to build on top of it, so that recruiter productivity and the manager productivity will go up. It's guaranteed right now with the AI infrastructure, the productivity of human beings will go up at least 3 to 4 folds. But that doesn't mean our work will be reduced to 0. We'll ask for more. So
once you're doing it, it sounds like there's like no going back. It's just going to keep escalating and increasing and moving forward, is what you're saying.
Exactly. So if you look at like frontline, like if you think about like a Uber, what is Uber doing? Uber is actually making sure you find the next ride as fast as possible. It won't give you choices of which car you're really going to get into, what color it is, how beautiful it is, how seats are made, which leather it is made. Nobody really writes. What is the price you will pay? Which particular car you will pick? Just get in, go to the next spot as fast as possible. But if you're really picking Airbnb, you actually look at where you will stay. So there are 2 different use cases and 2 different contexts. Jobs are also the same thing. What context you're really looking for a job? Are you an early stage like candidate who are really thinking about like, I want a transition job, which I'll get right now and eventually move into the job of my, whatever the dream I have? Or am I a person who's actually working in this particular field for so long, and I want the exact job what I'm really looking for, because that is the company I want to work for that particular problem? Like, let's say I want to work for Tesla because I worked in GM for so long and I have different aspirations right now. So it depends on what is the context of the person and the context of the company, and matching them is not foundational models. You need expertise on those areas. And that's where we really come into picture. Like, I'll give you an example. If you take oncologists, most of the oncologists actually give patients drug dosage based on algorithms for the last 10 years. They don't really write the prescription. You basically really give an input of what is a cancer and what kind of stage it is and what the circumstances are. And based on that, you basically get a list of dosages, what you have to give in a chemo or whatever it is. And you take it based on how the person is really reacting to that particular drug, you just alter it. But the core structure is actually given by an algorithm. But that doesn't mean you don't need an oncologist. The need for oncologists have really gone up than going down. So it's a very interesting. So every time a technology or a tool comes in, it solves the problem, but it doesn't really eliminate what we desire for.
How about this,
Yeah.
Mahe, Rick? Could it be the opposite way? Do you have a product or thinking of a product? And if you think of this product, you got to keep us in mind. But would say somebody's looking for a job, could somebody build kind of an AI model to find out what would be the right job for them in what company, what area? Because sometimes if you're looking for a job, what happens is you might say, I want to go to Google because like I'm going to get that status of working for Google, and my family and friends will say, wow, you're at Google, this is great. But maybe that's not really the right fit for you. So are there tools, or could there be tools where someone like Rick or myself could say, hey, I want to find a new job, but instead of going on emotions or chasing a status symbol company, or to find out what's really right for me, what works for me, what I have the skills, background, experience, talents, and that the actual hard data that would make sense for me to go to ABC Widget Company or 123 Company and so on. Does that exist? Or should it exist, or could it exist?
Personalization has everything to do with preferences. What do I prefer? And what do I prefer is not written on a resume. It's inside my head, and some of it is subconscious and unconscious too. That's why interviews are still relevant, because you are understanding the other person and the other person understanding you. If it is a basic job, you don't need that level of infrastructure. But what happens is in our infrastructure, we use something called as recommendation engines. Across every person who looks for a job, if they really import their resume into our infrastructure, we say like, hey, these are the 6 jobs you can really look for. If you are an employee, we'll give a different outcome. We say these are the career progressions you can think. These are the 7 different career progressions. If you're a marketing manager, you can become a senior marketing person or a VP of marketing, or really go into user experience, or really go into what you call as writing, or you go into sales. And these many people in the company have migrated into these different progressions. Now you pick what progression you want. And these progressions can help you in these formats. But to get this progression, what are the skills you have to get? Who are the mentors you should talk to? What are the gigs you should do before really going to these jobs? And if you can help them in that particular structure, people really get into the spots. Because if you give like 200 choices, nobody can pick. But if you can give like 4 or 5 choices and give a direction of how you can really go there, it makes a humongous difference. That's what we call as career pathing. How do you do a career path for an employee? The same career path, you can really tweak it into a different format using AI, and you call it as a succession plan. Now a manager can see the same person and see like where all I can put this person for the future succession. And how do I plan for my team where the succession happens? You're really looking at 2 different dimensions. Dimension 1 is employee growing. Employee 2, like dimension 2 is the manager looking at who can really progress for the newer jobs I have. And as HR really create that kind of connection between them, the whole organizational ecosystem will evolve. That's what we do with AI.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense. I really appreciate your wisdom and kind of ability to walk us through kind of the history of the actual like practical uses of AI. I really appreciate your wisdom. Thanks for coming on the show, Mahe.
Thank you. Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.